I'll string on you with you feeling. I'll string on you with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Adrian Zunchuk, CMT Charter Market English and CryptoBurp. Welcome to the first session of the last day of our Trading Congress 2024. We are back into the studio. Actually, we've been ready to actually just blow everybody's minds with the incredible guests that we have in the lineup today. And everybody, huge shout out and appreciation to our partners and sponsors at DYDX, at Bybit, at Cointel, and at Dragon's Land, who actually decided to come and support the good cause for helping a lot of traders to actually congregate and learn from profitable traders, from actually professional money managers, from portfolio managers, from hedge funds, from VCs, the people who really have skin in the game, the people who are really know how to move along within this field, filled with scammers and a lot of self-proclaimed gurus and experts that are basically ripping people off and just putting people in different rug pulls. It's a very difficult environment to stand by. It's a very hostile environment, I think, for a lot of new coming traders, which is why it's very important to find the reliable people who know what they are talking about, who have been in a space, like I said, for many, many years. And for being so, actually, you're in the very right place, because with our today's guest, who's going to join just in a second, they're going to be able to witness a lot of incredible insights about the market checks for Bitcoin, for altcoins. And this is going to be yet another rendition for what we did, some months ago, and to basically reiterate how incredibly well accurate and accurately, the predictions from our today's guests have come true. And before we do go so, I want to encourage and remind to everybody that the entire world is celebrating the Black Friday / the Cyber Monday weekend. And for everybody, we are actually no different. We are also supporting this good cause. And for everybody who wants to learn with accredited guidance 24/7 club support from my team on the trading side, and actually get this profitable trade setups and calls and early gems, all you have to do is just scan the QR code, and it's going to take you to the 50% off, or even more if you take on the longer duration memberships. So that is limited. That ends in just a couple of days. So there's not much time left, and this is for everybody to come in and then congregate in our incredible community, trusted by thousands. And actually, we're accredited to do what we're doing. There's a CMT Charter accreditation behind all of this. And without further ado, I'm more than happy to bring in our today's guest, Crypto Caesar, who is my dear friend, who's been in a space, who has exactly this type of a skin in a game that I'm talking about, who has all this brain in the world, who's got all this skin in the game, who's got all this profitability and all this proficiency on his side, all the accuracy that he's brought, to the community, I think has been very widely recognized to an extent that it's actually observed. It's being observed, for what Matthew does, for what Crypto Caesar does, with over 60,000 people. 60,000 people is an incredible stadium of people. Good luck trying to fit that in the room, right? It's impossible. And all you have to do is basically click on the follow button on our today's guest and Crypto Caesar, Crypto_Caesar1. So with such a powerful kickoff, I'm more than happy to welcome you to the show. How are you feeling today? How's it going?
I'm good. How are you, mate? Are you good? Thank you for the intro.
Great.
You're too kind.
Thank you so much. Well, 100% facts. I'm just saying the facts, saying how it is, man. So I mean, for everybody who's just coming new, the ones that are gonna come and learn, how they can participate in what you're doing, why wouldn't we run them through a little bit of an introduction about you?
Well, I'm Crypto Caesar. I'm the CEO of Crypto Caesar Capital. I run the Caesar's Palace Discord group. And we do all sorts in the crypto space. I've been involved in the crypto space for 8 years now, and was involved in traditional finance for about 15 years previous to that, one way or the other. So yeah, I think right now things are looking pretty good, I would say. And I just had a look back at the conversation we had some months ago on your channel, and everything we discussed really has come to fruition. So that's pretty good, and long may that continue.
Oh man, just as I was saying, right? I mean, each and every single point that we discussed back the other day, Caesar, we actually like you look in the charts, like you and I remember us having this exact discussion, about what was what would be happening. Actually, you speaking about it on stage in a couple of different conferences, right? Me speaking on the same exact stuff, in the conferences. You printing all those cycles, on the altcoin side. I mean, it's just crazy, how accurate it's become. And well, it means that the odds are on our side, man. So how's 2024 treated you so far?
2024 has been really good for Crypto Caesar Capital. I mean, we've in the group, for example, we we don't take too much risk. So we always say that people should have at least 50% Bitcoin in their portfolio. Allocation is important. So 50% Bitcoin, 25% Ethereum, and then 25% altcoins, a mixture of some, blue chip altcoins and some new narrative style altcoins. And we're doing really well. I just looked at our model portfolio. We're 210% up, which is pretty good. And that's partly because Bitcoin is performing so well. But we're expecting the altcoins to start outperforming Bitcoin probably towards the end of this quarter, certainly into the next quarter.
I'm with you I'm with you, right? So I'll probably be like, if you see me leaning more bullish, for everybody who's watching that, that right now. Well, that's what Matthew and I actually, that's what me and Caesar have been, for the past year and a half or so, ever since 2023 started, since it kicked off basically with this massive breakouts, and in early 2023, and it will have soon been literally 2 years ever since that happened, as we are literally at the verge of a transition into 2025, which historically is lining up to be the replica of 2021, of replica of 2017, replica of 2013,
Yeah.
and the story goes, as old as the time is. So what is the quick summary of what's been happening for you from your perspective, through the lenses that you see the markets?
Well, I mean, as we both know, and I'm sure all the listeners know, crypto is very cyclical, and markets are very cyclical. So when you understand those cycles, and you understand the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin, for example, and the cycle of the altcoins coming from Bitcoin dominance, it's usually quite, I wouldn't say easy, but it's fairly sort of, fairly easy to understand. But a lot of people just cannot, for whatever reason, understand Bitcoin dominance, and they want alt season now, and they've been asking for an alt season for probably the last 18 months or so, and it just hasn't happened. But now I think when we have a look at the charts, excuse me, when we look at the charts, I'll be able to show you that I think now is the time when alt season is gonna begin. So we're almost there.
I got you. And what are the key highlights? So kind of like highlights and the key drivers, key factors driving all this movement lately.
Well, with Bitcoin, obviously, we've got it's a cyclical nature of Bitcoin. So whether we had a Harris or a Trump administration, I think Bitcoin would have continued on its trajectory to the upside. But there could have been some shorter to midterm volatility if Harris had got in. But what I can say is, now that we have an incoming Trump administration or a Republican administration who are very pro Bitcoin, very pro crypto, I think the headwinds that the market was facing, certainly in the last couple of years from Gary Gensler and the Democratic administration, have now become tailwinds. And they just swapped around, so the headwinds are now tailwinds. So I think I'm even more confident now with this cycle being a good cycle. I mean, the key drivers are institutions at the moment. I mean, if you just look at the spot volume on the ETFs, it's just unbelievable. I mean, the Bitcoin spot ETF has been the most, the most incredible and best ETF they've ever dropped. unbelievable the amount of flows, capital flows that's been going in. So it's been, the best ETF they've ever dropped. It just eclipses all other ETFs. So just goes to show that there is a lot of interest in the market. But also, I think some of the other key drivers going forward into the future are going to be that we've got a Trump administration which is going to kill this choke point 2.0. And I think, I don't know if you watched the pod with Mark Andreessen and Joe Rogan the other day. It was just a real eye-opener. Yeah, I think, if any of the listeners are interested to watch that, it's a real eye-opener as to actually what the Biden administration were doing to crypto companies, debanking them, making it super, super difficult for them to do business in the US, and a lot of them just left. But now we have a different administration which is very pro-crypto, and I'm not trying to make this political at all. This is just about crypto. But now we have an administration which is very pro-crypto. I should imagine that choke point is going to reverse, and the doors are going to be open for flows, capital flows into the US. Trump's talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. He's talking about potentially zero capital gains tax for new crypto projects and startups coming to the US. So I think, as I said at the beginning, all of those headwinds that we had the last few years are now going to become tailwinds, and that should be very, very positive and should be a positive driver in the mid to longer term in this cycle, certainly as well in the short term.
ETFs, just for everybody who's watching and listening to it right now, ETFs on this cumulative spot ETF volume just for Bitcoin, basically since the very conception at the early January this year, we've broken, close to, and actually we're at the verge of breaking 560 billion cumulative spot volume, right? So more than $500 billion in just a couple of months, just 10 months or so, basically driven by the institutions, right?
Yeah.
What I've for the entirety of the Congress, what our guests and I spoke about is basically that there's so little retail adoption. Adoption is one thing, but so little retail participation in the market, to an extent that it doesn't show. There is no signs. There is no interest anywhere near close to what it was 3 years ago. Do you receive it as exactly the same, or is it so different on your end?
I don't know. I think it's kind of the same. I think when Bitcoin sort of got to about 25, 30K in the last cycle, that's when the retail started coming in, That's when, neighbors started knocking on the door and asking about, should I buy this shitcoin or whatever. And I think we're in a similar spot at the moment. I think that when we surpass 100K, which I think that's going to probably happen this year, that's when things are going to start going onto the news. It's going to become publicized. It's become far more commercial, and retail are going to start coming in. I think that's the point when retail start coming in. So we're kind of, I get what you're saying. There is a bit of a different feeling, but retail will come. But what's driving the crypto market at the moment, or Bitcoin in particular, is institutions. And I've said for many years now, at least for the last 2 years, as you know, that this cycle is going to be the institutional cycle. So it's going to be a good, strong cycle. I mean, you just have to look at people like Michael Saylor, for example, MicroStrategy, what he's doing there. And I think Rumble are talking about taking on Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I think Michael Dell mentioned, I think he's probably got some Bitcoin on his balance sheet, or is going to have Bitcoin on his balance sheet. And I've noticed some Japanese companies as well in the last few weeks have put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So I think this is going to become more and more common as we move through the cycle. And when and if Trump and the Republican administration say that they're going to have a strategic reserve for Bitcoin, and I think that that's just extremely bullish for Bitcoin, and then that just opens the floodgates to sovereign wealth funds. There's talk of Qatar having Bitcoin potentially as a strategic reserve. We go to Dubai a lot, and there's a lot of talk of potentially the UAE or the some of the countries within the UAE having Bitcoin in their balance sheet. So I think this is just the start of a huge institutional bull run, really.
Oh yeah, and just to back it up with numbers, right? I mean, because probably it's regional. The interest is regional. However, if we take into consideration, I just looked it up literally on the Google Trends, right? The retail participation in terms of the Google Trends is down from 65% 2 weeks ago, down to 44% right now versus 2021 May. All right. So quick kind of like maths is basically that 6 out of 10 people or so, that were in, out of 10 people that were here in 2021, they are here now. What it means is basically that, the vast majority of the retail, hasn't even, just like you mentioned, hasn't even answered this call, right? This 100K call. And it's only going to happen after it hits the headlines and so on. Funnily enough, so many people, man, I mean, you don't even know, so many people every cycle, I drop a text to a couple of those, high net worths and the VIPs, like the people that I had truly admired, like, a couple of celebrities and football players and so on. And I tell them, like, this might be about time to get interested back in Bitcoin. This might be time to get your interest outside of Bitcoin. All right.
Yeah.
Something to consider, food for thought, right? Most of them, of course, would never listen, because people only kind of like realize in hindsight, okay, I should have listened, and I was stupid for not buying Bitcoin 2013 and 17 and 20. You know the drill, right? However, what it translates is that the vast majority of the public kind of like a public notice is not there, right?
Yeah.
So I fully agree that this rally has been almost purely institutional up until now, right? And that, of course, is scaling more and broader and higher and just deeper, right? That's not me saying that. Those are the numbers. Like the curve on the ETF side, on the AUM, for instance, it's not going flat. It's not going linear. It's going literally exponential.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, ignoring kind of like taking away a little bit of the trims, here and there. It's literally going exponential. And this exponential stuff is happening ever since, September and October, which is basically exactly what you and I discussed the other days. And all in all, I mean, you've also, by the way, brought the charts, right? And there is the price action concerns. There's the price action, I should say, that this the market structure, the key technical levels to mark. And you've kept showing it up, for a couple of months already, and people are slowly starting to believe. However, there's still a lot of bears, practicing and preaching that this 100K is going to be the top, that it's no way it's going to go past anywhere, beside that the altcoins are ruined, like. So why don't you prove them wrong? Show up the charts, will you?
Well, I think most of retail usually come in at the midpoint or around the midpoint, just after the midpoint of the cycle. So if I share you my. So hopefully can you see this chart? It's the Bitcoin liquid index chart. You can see that, yeah?
We see it.
Okay, so this is essentially for the listeners, the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin. Now, a lot of people talk about the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin and incorrectly think that the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin has got something to do with the halving. But whilst the halving is, a little bit important, now it's not as important as it used to be. This is actually a 4-year cycle measured from bottom to bottom, and that's how you should really measure a cycle, because when one cycle bottoms out, so when you find a bottom, a new cycle is born. So there's a rebirth of a new cycle. And if you measure from each from one bottom or trough of a cycle to the other, you'll find that it's around about 4 years. So that's 203 bars, so 203 weeks, 208 weeks in 4 years. This one, 205 weeks. So generally speaking, the market takes 4 years to go from one bottom to another bottom. Now, it's quite interesting, really, because, in fact, the peaks are also around about 4 years. And I'm not sure whether that's just a coincidence at the moment or whether that is something that we should be interested in. But certainly, previously, the markets have sort of moved on a 4-year cycle basis. So 4 years from peak to peak and 4 years from bottom to bottom. But as a directional trader, I'm not really so interested in peaks because peaks can come a little bit sooner or indeed a little bit later. But what I'm more interested in is where the bottom of the market is. And I've mapped them out here, and you can see where each bottom of each market has been. And in between that, we've got a midpoint. So basically from this bottom to this bottom is 4 years, and the midpoint is 2 years. And what's actually quite interesting is when you look at the midpoint of each cycle. Hang on a minute, give me a moment. So these are the midpoints here. There's a midpoint, 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 midpoint. Now, each midpoint signifies the halfway point or the midpoint of each cycle. So it's basically 2 years. And what's interesting about Bitcoin is that at every midpoint, it has started to attack the previous all-time high. So you can see the high here made in 2011. As soon as Bitcoin got to the midpoint of the cycle, it started to attack that previous all-time high and started to breach above it. Similar here, so it made the high, the ultimate high in December 2013. Then there was the low. Then at the midpoint of the cycle, Bitcoin again started to attack the previous all-time high. So right at the midpoint of the cycle. And again, it made its high in 2017, 18, its low then in 18, and then it started to attack the midpoint around about the 7th of December 2020. Now, interestingly, this cycle, we had an ETF launch in the beginning of this year, and that caused the market to become a bit excited, and in fact went straight up to the all-time high. But then if you look at it on a line chart, what it actually did was it just sort of consolidated underneath the all-time high, really, for about a 7 or an 8 month period. And then at the true midpoint, which is about 18th of November, it was then that the market started to really attack that previous all-time high or had surpassed it. So what's quite interesting about this really is that it's at the midpoint of every cycle that Bitcoin usually is surpassing its previous all-time high. So if you look at Bitcoin dominance in relation to the midpoint, you will see that I've mapped out the midpoints here, and you will see very close to the midpoint, Bitcoin dominance starts to fall off a cliff. That's when it starts to really, really take a dive, and that's when the altcoins start to outperform Bitcoin. So that was the first midpoint here in December 16. End of December 16, and then we had the midpoint on the 7th of December 20 in the last cycle. And what happened to Bitcoin dominance at the midpoint? It topped out, and then it started to take a dive. And what happened to the altcoin market? Obviously, the altcoin market started to move, because altcoin market starts to move when Bitcoin dominance starts to drop. And interestingly enough, this cycle, again, I mean, I've been saying for months now, you'll probably remember about a year ago now in Dubai, I was saying that we were looking at least a 58% Bitcoin dominance. In fact, we got a little bit above that. We got to almost 61%. So there was a slight deviation above this area of resistance. But essentially, we got up to the 58% plus mark. And this now is right just after the midpoint. So from a cycles basis, I'm looking now to see if Bitcoin dominance breaks down, because it's likely, in my view, that Bitcoin dominance is now going to start breaking down because we're past the midpoint. And this is when Bitcoin dominance will slowly start moving down, and the altcoin market will start to outperform Bitcoin. But, you know, it's a long time that you have to wait. You have to be extremely patient. And that's why it's always worth taking heavier positions in Bitcoin first, and then waiting for the altcoin market before you then start taking positions in the altcoin market later.
Such a good run through so far, Cesar, and I appreciate it. I think, you know, the simplicity in which you actually convey the most important factors, you know, for I think what a lot of people just appreciate about the altcoin season or the alt season, right? I often observe this CMC coin market cap of like an altcoin season index, and for what it is right now, I'm just looking it up on my phone right now. It's actually 68%.
Yeah.
All right. That up from 25% or not even 30% 2 weeks ago. All right.
Yeah.
So what it means is basically we're inevitably getting closer towards this exact, well, confirmation of what you mentioned, right? As in Bitcoin dominance falling off a cliff. And like while you were saying this, I actually got goosebumps, right? Because this brings back like the best memories, that I think you and I had always had about crypto. Like this is where it's like pure crypto degen type of rallies and pumps, and this
Yeah.
pure sweet season kind of like just goes on. So I cannot wait for enough for it. And you also tried the on-chain data, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a look at on-chain stuff quite a lot. I mean, some traders, as you know, kind of still think this is a bit of voodoo type stuff.
Oh, yeah. Is
And
it perhaps why would they prove them wrong? Show it up. What was that?
yeah, well, I mean, I do think some of it is voodoo, to be honest, and you've got to be careful with it. But there are some particular metrics which I think definitely are worth looking at. Let's take a look at one now. So it's the MVRVZ score, which I know is a favorite of yours. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see perfectly.
So the MVRVZ score, without going into too much detail, is essentially a really good metric to work out whether the market is overvalued or undervalued. And when it reaches these sort of green zones, the market is considered hugely undervalued, and when it gets up into these red zones, the market is considered hugely overvalued. And if you have a look at how it's been able to sort of gauge the peaks and troughs of the market, it's been hugely accurate. So you've got here, look, right down December 16th, 2018. I remember that well. I think Bitcoin was probably trading around about 3K at that point.
I was on a plane from Vegas at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was I remember that well. And again, it marks the peaks as well very well. So this is the peak in 8th of December 2017. I'm sure you remember that Christmas quite well as well.
Of course.
But it's just a very good way of essentially looking at a chart in a very basic way and working out, is this market overvalued or is this market undervalued? And at the moment, this market is, I would say, slightly undervalued, or it's kind of in the position, or it's at the point of the cycle that it should be. And right now, I think it's around about 3.09 or thereabouts, maybe a little bit higher. But for me, this is a metric that I'm really interested in. And for all the listeners who just want a basic metric that they can look at also for free, if you get, it used to be Look Into Bitcoin. Now I think it's part of the Bitcoin Magazine Pro. But you can look at this for free, which is quite a nice little metric. So for me at the moment, I would want to see the MVRVZ score at least around about close to the 6 mark before I would get a little bit twitchy and think this market is now being close to being overvalued. I mean, in the last cycle, it got up to about 7.13. I don't know whether it's going to get that high this time. It could get higher than that this time if we have the institutional flows that we anticipate. But it's just a waiting game, really. And also, it's a timing thing. I mean, a lot of people keep saying to me, what's your target for Bitcoin? I have a target for Bitcoin this cycle, but as you probably know, Adrian, markets are more about timing than price. Timing is such a key element in markets, and that's why a lot of people get really chopped up, because they're just waiting for a price rather than waiting for a time. And timing a market is super important. And this metric and other metrics kind of allow you to time a market better, because you can look at the metrics and you can look at the indicators and you could think to yourself, is this market hot at the moment, or is this market really cold at the moment? Hot being, overvalued, cold being undervalued. And looking at some decent metrics, you can kind of work out whether something's overpriced or underpriced. So it's more really about timing and looking at the metrics at the time. But for me, this is a really good indicator. And for me, this tells me there is a lot left in this run. So that would be a metric I would suggest your listeners have a look at, because it's free and it's really simple to use.
Yeah, you're right. You're correct. I actually use this MVRV on a bi-weekly basis. I double check on the values, twice a week or so.
Yeah.
And he's strictly triggering the warning alerts, anywhere over 7 on the Z-score, right? 7 standard deviations.
Yeah.
Against the mean of the market cap against the realized cap. I'd say it's a severe, overvaluation at that time, of course, triggering all those peak signals, or at least not even signals, but the warnings, right? Just the overheating warnings. But after which, actually, the market still continued to rally for quite some time. So here we are, kind of like 3, right? 309, if you will, like 3 anywhere close. So, well, just a simple maths, as I often kind of like bring it on in the reports, is that it seems it lines up to be at least 100% just on top of that, right? If we were to keep exactly the same realized cap, right? And all of a sudden just encourage a lot of market cap, basically double the market cap that we have right now within the same kind of like number of transactions. So double the bloat, kind of like load in the markets, right? It would still not even trigger properly the warning signal, right? For the top historically. Right.
Yeah,
and again, we can try to guess and anticipate, of course, perhaps this time is going to be, different and so on. However, we have a lot of data kind of like polls and examples and case studies, from the past that, well, luckily for us are helpful in determining what the expectations are. So by the rule of expectations, we can expect and anticipate that there's at least double for what we have right now in terms of the pricing. And there's probably so much more on the altcoin side. So moving towards the altcoin side, Cesar, let's break it down in terms of the opportunities and risks. As in, do you have like some sort of like an overview, and do you watch those top performance in the market, and what sort of catalysts you have and you eye them?
Well, I mean, the first thing I say to anyone who comes to Crypto Caesar Capital and is interested in investing in crypto is that it's good to have alpha in your portfolio. It's really, really good. You need some alpha in your portfolio, but you also need to be careful, and you need to be conservative, and you need to have a good balanced portfolio. And that's what I said right at the beginning of this call with you, that I always say that 50% Bitcoin in a portfolio as your hedge against the rest of your portfolio, for me, I think works really well. 25% Ethereum, because Ethereum is Ethereum, and it doesn't matter what people say about Ethereum. For me, Ethereum is going to perform well this cycle, just like it did last cycle and the cycle before. Most things are built on the EVM. It's got a huge market cap. So 50% Bitcoin, 25% Ethereum, and then I think 25% altcoins, and that's where your alpha is coming from. And I usually say to people, or at least this is what I wrote in my report that I published in September 2023, which you've seen. I say it's usually best to go with 5 blue chip altcoins. So altcoins that have a good sort of directional trade on them, that have been in the space for years, that you can sort of legitimately know that they're going to perform fairly well. So 5 blue chip altcoins, and then 5 other altcoins which sort of capture the narrative of a cycle. And every cycle, as you know, has a different narrative, right? So back in 2017, we had the ICO narrative. And then in 2020, 2021, we had the decentralized finance narrative, etc. And I think the narrative of this cycle is going to be somewhat gaming. There might be an element of Web3 and decentralized finance also. And also I think that RWA, real world assets, is also going to be a narrative which investors are going to be interested in as well. But at the moment, I think there are 2 pretty good directional trades which we put into the group some time ago, which are performing really well, and I'll show you those very quickly if you want, and then we can have a look at my Bitcoin prediction. Although, as I say, I'm not really one for prediction, but
let's do so.
Yeah. So the first one is it? Can you see my screen?
perfectly.
Yeah. So this is an old dog, but it's the first ever meme coin. It's one of the first ever altcoins, really. Going back to 2014, it's Dogecoin. But this to me looked like such an easy, straightforward directional trade. I mean, the way that it performs at each cycle, that it consolidates, then it breaks out, then it consolidates, and then it breaks out, and then it consolidates. It's just such a simple, straightforward directional trade. My view is that I think that Dogecoin's going to get to at least $1.28, probably more likely $2 in this trade. So that's a really simple, easy directional trade for somebody, and might be one of those altcoins I was talking about that is, considered blue chip. When I say blue chip, I mean it's been in the space, it's trusted, everybody knows what it is, it's not going anywhere, it's not going to zero, etc. So Dogecoin is one. Another one. Another straightforward directional trade for me is XRP. Again, one of those sort of blue chips that you might want to look at. Didn't do so well in the last cycle because of regulatory pressures from the SEC, etc. But now those have been lifted. I think this is a really good directional trade. And same sort of thing: consolidation, breakout, consolidation, breakout. So again, I'm looking here for the 2618 Fibonacci at least. So that's $5. Maybe it can get up to the $7 mark, which is the 3618. In relation to Bitcoin, and I hesitate to give any predictions on Bitcoin because, as I say, it's more about timing for me rather than price. And I will kill my positions when I think the timing is right. And that's just the way it is. And that's the way that you should trade and you should invest. You should have zero emotions, and you should be ready to kill a position when you think the time is right. So whilst, I can give a kind of a price target, if I think the time is right to kill my position, I will kill my position either before or after the target. But this seems to me to be a potentially logical target. So we've got this huge channel which was created back in 2017, which Bitcoin seems to be respecting. It reached the top of the channel created the top of the channel in 17, and it reached the top of the channel in 21, bottom of the channel in 20, reaching the bottom of the channel again in 22. So for me, there's the possibility that we might get close to the top of this channel, maybe not to the top of it, but a basic trend-based Fibonacci extension to the 2618 takes us to about 192 or about 186, 190 or thereabouts. And then a full extension out to the 3618, which would be at the top of the channel, takes Bitcoin around about the $250,000 mark. And I know, people think $250,000 is a crazy target, but it was just, I think, yesterday or the day before that Tom Lee, who I respect a lot, who seems to have got a lot of things right in the last few years, was saying 250K as well as a potential. And that 250K could come with the tailwinds that I was discussing a moment ago, with a strategic reserve, institutional involvement, etc., etc. That could push it. But I think a reasonable target for Bitcoin this cycle is 186. Maybe on a good institutional push, maybe we can get to the top of the channel at 250K. But as I said, everything for me is more about timing rather than price.
Oh yeah, I mean, on one hand, those numbers seem crazy.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Bitcoin at 70,000 sounded crazy as well, when we were breaking 15 or 20,000.
Yeah.
So each and every single time, from my experience, from my observations, it often overshoots and overrides, the targets that we anticipate in our crazes, because we very often underappreciate this madness of crowds, basically, just people relentlessly just running and raging, to just get in
Yeah.
something, right? Because everybody else does it. And then of course in the bear markets and the other way around. Although all in all, I would not only be not surprised if that actually happens, I will welcome it very warmly. And even if we get there, I would say, just like you say, it's not even the combination of the target and the timing, right? It's also observing all those long-term valuation, methodologies, just like you did on the
Yeah.
on-chain, on the MVRV,
Absolutely.
observing the market bloat, on the NUPL, and different models, right? They seem to point in a similar direction. We typically override those targets because of the behavioral reasons. So it may happen, we're gonna see it so much higher, and regardless what it's gonna be, so far each and every single prediction that is shared, over the last, I think, 2 years that you and I kind of like spent time together, has basically checked out like crazily accurate. So keep on going that direction, man.
Well, we're bound to get something wrong in the end, but I think as long as you get things right more than you do wrong, that's all that matters, right? So,
Of course, of course.
but for me, I think that we are nowhere near a top of a market. I know a lot of people are calling it a top already. For me, I don't feel as though this is a top. There are far too many tailwinds at the moment. We've got a good, strong business cycle at the moment. We've still got a lot of capital on the sideline at the moment in traditional finance. I mean, Warren Buffett's got $320 billion on the sideline. We have the business cycle. We have interest rates, being reduced by the Fed. We have a strong institutional push and adoption with Bitcoin, and we have a very, very, very favorable administration in America that's going to support crypto going to the future. So I think, the stage is set for a very positive, strong cycle this time round. So we look forward to it. This is only the beginning, in my view.
I mean, same. I mean, I just appreciate what you're saying because, I mean, the problem at times is, that when we share those views, that they empower each other, right? To an extent that that's where you get those goosebumps, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think, it also kind of like empowers, those values, because many people just project their thoughts in a similar fashion and just jump on a bandwagon, creating this thrust, creating this throttle, creating this, lifting up force. So, hopefully it's going to continue just like so. Although one final question before we go. With you, Cesar, taking on your experience, in the markets for a couple of years, taking what you're doing with the CC Capital as well, that I truly encourage everybody actually to give it a check, right? Because Crypto Cesar, like I said, he's got skin in the game. He's got he knows what he's talking about, basically. So I kindly encourage you actually to go ahead and hit the follow button on his account, crypto_Caesar1, crypto_Caesar1. And within the CC Capital, like I said, that I truly encourage everybody to go and check out. What's the type of a strategy to close off on wrap the show, on getting out? Because we still kind of like want to know that, okay, we're maybe getting closer to the middle of the run, but what happens next? Like, do you kind of like rebalance your portfolio? Do you go out completely your Bitcoin, Ethereum? Do you just put it in the stables? Which stables? We know the MiCA is coming. So what's the strategy for you the next year and a half or so?
Well, for me at the moment, I'm a bit heavy Bitcoin. So my allocation at the moment is about 80% Bitcoin. So I need to rebalance my portfolio a little bit. So I'm starting to rebalance that at the moment. So I'm looking, I had started rebalancing it and continue to rebalance it. But for anyone in my group who keeps saying to me, should I sell this and buy this? And should I sell that and buy this? And I say, no, you just have conviction in your position. If you've got a nice, well-balanced portfolio, as long as you haven't got 150,000 meme coins and no Bitcoin and Ethereum and any decent altcoins, then you're going to be fine. So you've got to have conviction in your position. And then when the time comes, then you can start looking to take profit. And if you go onto my Twitter under articles, I wrote quite a long article setting out all of the metrics that I think are interesting to look at to try and gauge when might be a good time to start taking profit. But it's really important that you do take profit. And if you're just a Bitcoin person only, then it may be that you decide that you don't want to take any profit and you just want to hold this Bitcoin and hold it there for 10 years or 20 years, whatever it may be. That's a great strategy. If it's for a pension or something like that, it's a brilliant strategy. But if you are involved in the crypto space and you're interested in it and you want to take profit and you want to try and buy, sell, high, low, etc., buy low, sell high rather, then you need to look at those indicators and you need to have a bit of a strategy. And I think joining a group like mine or yours is where you can learn from people and you can work out a strategy. Everybody is different. Everybody has a different risk tolerance, okay? And everybody might have a different strategy. But working with someone who knows what they're talking about in the crypto space and risk management, etc., you can work out based on your risk tolerance how you can best perform that strategy.
Ladies and gentlemen, what an incredible, icing on the top of the cake, as you say, or the cherry on the top of a cake, or just a beautiful close and to wrap the show with Crypto Caesar. It's been incredible pleasure speaking with you, not only because we are good friends and I appreciate who you are and what you do in the space, and I truly admire your reports, the craftsmanship that you actually are on, and like I said, the friendship that we have. So I cannot recommend for everybody who's watching and viewing has just come across Crypto Caesar. Do go rush and hit the follow button because this guy is incredible. And I just truly appreciate your time, your always willingness and the kindness to come to the show and then just spend time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're making me blush, Adrian.
Then, I mean, mirror back, right? Mirror back right at you. I mean, you're incredible and just reflecting all this beauty, on the world outside around you. So I appreciate you spending time with us. And for everybody who's just, like I said, who's just come and entered this space, you need to follow and focus on the reliability in the space, because this world is full of scammers, full of filthy people, who are self-proclaimed gurus. You have to find the right people to find mentors. And even Warren Buffett had mentors, right? His mentors were basically people like Benjamin Graham in many different shapes and fashions. And Warren Buffett has his own people that, his own mentees and so on. That's how the craftsmanship is actually built. That's how we improve. And that's why people follow other people like Elon Musk, as a big kind of like a role model. One of the role models is Crypto Caesar. And I think that's been an incredible session. And since it's a Black Friday, this is a kind reminder that it's actually time is running up and you still can rush to claim your VIP seat actually for 50% off or even more, inside of the Burbness. And that's time limited, number limited, seat limited. And you have an actual opportunity to acquire the materials to stop missing all those pumps and crazy rallies. And at the same time, avoid getting wrecked from all those, filthy scams that is industry so full of. So all you have to do is just scan the QR code and check out this way. And I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your viewership, your support. And I've been your host, Adrian Zdunchuk, CMT, Charter Market Technician. That's a wrap. And I'll see you on the next session. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you.